Rain fell in thin silver lines across the city that morning, quiet, gentle, like the sky didn't want to wake anyone. A black car rolled to a stop outside a flower stall that smelled of wet roses and mud. Inside it sat Ethan Cole, a man whose name sat on skyscrapers, newspapers, and charity galas, yet whose eyes were always empty. Father's Day had arrived, and the man who owned everything had no one left to call him Dad. Across the street, Lila, a small girl no older than 10, crouched beneath an old umbrella patched with tape. Her hands were red from the cold, clutching a basket of handmade paper flowers she had crafted from discarded magazines. She wasn't selling them for money today, she was giving them away. Her mother once told her, "Gifts don't have to cost gold to make someone feel rich." Ethan watched her through the tinted window, wondering why she smiled at strangers who barely noticed her. The car's heater hummed while she danced between puddles, trying to keep the flowers dry. Then, she slipped. The basket flew, colors scattering across the wet asphalt. Ethan didn't know why he opened the door. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was loneliness. He stepped into the rain, picked up one soggy flower, and handed it back. Lila looked up, her big brown eyes full of surprise. "Thank you, sir," she whispered, hugging the rest of her basket close. "They're not real, but they make people smile." Ethan almost smiled back. Almost. Inside the car, his driver frowned. "Sir, we're running late for the meeting." But Ethan's gaze stayed on the girl. Her clothes were torn, her shoes too small, yet there was a warmth around her that the richest homes never carried. As the car drove away, Ethan kept that paper flower beside him on the seat. By the time he reached the skyscraper, its edges had dried, fragile but beautiful. That night, when the city's lights blurred through the glass walls of his penthouse, Ethan sat in silence. He opened the drawer where dozens of expensive gifts lay unopened: silver watches, custom pens, diamond cufflinks. He took the paper flower out instead. Something about its simplicity unsettled him. Down in the streets below, Lila walked home through alleys glowing with flickering signs. She stopped by a bakery window, watching a family laugh over cake and candles. Her lips moved without sound, a wish, maybe. Behind her smile hid a secret pain only the night understood. Her world and Ethan's, separated by glass, by wealth, by fate, had brushed for just a moment. And somehow, that was enough to start a story neither of them saw coming. Before we dive deeper, tell me, where in the world are you watching from? It amazes me how far a single story can travel. Drop your city, let's see how wide kindness still spreads. The next morning, Ethan woke to find the paper flower resting on his desk. He didn't remember putting it there. He reached for his coffee, but his mind replayed the little girl's voice. Something about it had cracked the quiet shell around his life. He turned on the TV. News anchors spoke about the economy, politics, and profits, all noise. Then a commercial came on for Father's Day. Happy families hugging, sons gifting ties, daughters writing cards. He turned it off instantly. His reflection on the dark screen looked like a stranger. He hadn't celebrated Father's Day since the accident, since his little boy, Noah, was taken years ago. That memory was a locked room he never entered. But today, a child's handmade flower had found its way through the lock. Ethan pressed the flower to his chest and exhaled, long and deep. Maybe he would drive again tomorrow. Maybe he would find that little girl, not to thank her, but to understand why something so small could make a man like him feel human again. Outside, dawn spilled over the skyline like forgiveness. And for the first time in years, Ethan didn't hide from it. The following morning, Ethan's car pulled up at the same corner where he'd first seen her. The air smelled of baked bread and summer rain, but the girl wasn't there. Only her little stool and a few damp pieces of paper remained, fluttering under the light wind. He stepped out anyway, ignoring the confused look from his driver. Across the street, a florist leaned on the counter, watching him. "You looking for the paper flower girl?" the woman asked. Her voice carried that mix of kindness and exhaustion found only in people who'd seen too much of life. Ethan nodded. "She usually stands here?" "Every morning before school. But lately, she's been missing classes to help her mother. They live down on Alder Street, near the bridge." Ethan thanked her and slipped a note into the tip jar before leaving. As he walked back to his car, the world felt louder, Children laughing, engines starting, someone playing a guitar from a nearby shop window. Ordinary sounds, but they all seemed to belong to a life he'd forgotten how to live. That evening, he skipped the board meeting. He drove alone through narrow streets lined with cracked walls and hanging laundry, until he saw her again, sitting outside a small apartment block, her basket half full of wilted paper flowers. "Hey," he said gently. "You remember me?" Lila's eyes brightened immediately. The man with the sad smile. He laughed, caught off guard. "I didn't realize my smile had a name." "It does now," she said, offering him one of her flowers. "You look like you needed this one too." He took it slowly, his chest tightening with something he didn't quite understand. "Why do you give these away, Lila? Don't you need to sell them?" She shook her head. "Mema says giving is better than selling. We don't have much, but kindness is free, and free things last longer." Her words struck deeper than any stock report or speech ever had. He crouched down to her level, watching her small hands fold another flower from a torn magazine page. The edges were rough, the colors mismatched, yet somehow it looked perfect. He wanted to ask more, about her life, her dreams, but a voice called from the doorway behind her. "Lila! Come inside, baby." The doctor said no more sitting in the cold. Ethan turned. A pale woman stood there, coughing softly, her smile fragile but loving. Lila waved and ran inside, leaving him standing with that paper flower in his hand. He stared at it for a long time before whispering, almost to himself, "Free things last longer." That night, he couldn't sleep. He saw flashes, his own son's laughter, his wife's face, the hospital lights fading behind glass. The ache came rushing back. He sat by the window until dawn, holding both paper flowers side by side. One from yesterday, one from today, both from a girl who had nothing, yet somehow gave more than anyone he'd ever known. He made a decision then, quiet, firm, unspoken. Tomorrow, he'd visit again. But this time, not as a stranger. If you were there in that moment, what would you have done? Be honest, comment your answer below. And if words fail you, just hit like to prove that compassion still matters. The next day, Ethan showed up early, carrying 2 coffees and a small bag from the bakery across the street. He waited on the corner until Lila appeared, dragging her stool and basket behind her. Her eyes widened. "You came back." "I owed you breakfast," he said. "And maybe a few smiles." She giggled, sitting down beside him on the curb. Together, they shared pastries as cars rushed past, a billionaire in a tailored coat and a little girl in faded shoes, laughing over crumbs. People stared, but Ethan didn't care. For once, he didn't feel alone. As she finished eating, Lila opened her backpack and pulled out a wrinkled card made of cardboard. On the front, in uneven handwriting, it read, "Happy Father's Day to anyone who misses their dad." She handed it to him. "I made extras, just in case someone needed one." Ethan's hand trembled as he accepted it. His throat tightened. She didn't know, couldn't know, what that meant to him. He whispered, "Thank you, Lila. You just gave me something no one else could." Her smile could have lit the whole street. And in that simple morning, between the steam of warm coffee and the hum of traffic, Ethan felt something shift, the faint heartbeat of a man slowly coming back to life. Days turned into a quiet pattern. Each morning, Ethan would stop by the corner with 2 cups of coffee and that same easy smile Lila had given him permission to wear again. They talked about silly things, paper flowers, stray cats, the best kind of bread. But beneath those little conversations, something bigger was changing. The emptiness that had followed Ethan for years began to crack open like thin ice. Lila didn't know who he truly was, the man behind the billion-dollar empire, and he didn't tell her. Around her, he wasn't a name or a headline. He was just someone learning to feel again. One afternoon, as sunlight spilled through the thin clouds, Lila asked, "Why do you always look sad when people talk about family?" Ethan froze. He could lie, but those eyes deserved truth. "Because I lost mine," he said softly. "A long time ago." She looked down, her small fingers fidgeting with a torn magazine strip. "I lost someone too. My dad. Mama says he's in heaven now, watching if I'm good." Ethan's breath caught. "I'm sure he's proud." You're doing more good than most people ever do. Lila smiled faintly, then glanced at his car. Do you still miss them? Even when you're big and rich? He hesitated. Every day. For a long while, they just sat, a child and a man, both shaped by grief but unwilling to give up on love. Have you ever had someone help you when no one else would? Write yes and tell me their name. Maybe gratitude can travel further than we think. Later that week, Ethan's assistant noticed something strange. Meetings rescheduled, projects delayed, his boss smiling at random moments. Sir, are you okay? She asked carefully. Ethan chuckled. I think I'm remembering how to be. He began visiting Lila's neighborhood after work, sometimes bringing groceries for her mother, sometimes books for Lila. He never announced his wealth, he simply helped, quietly. When her mother protested, he'd say, "It's just a thank you. For the paper flower." One evening, while he helped fix the flickering bulb outside their door, Lila's mother stepped closer. "Mr. Cole, I know who you are," she said softly. Ethan paused, startled. She smiled, tired but kind. "The world knows your face. But thank you for not bringing that world here. My daughter thinks you're just her friend. Please let her believe that." He nodded. "I promise." The air between them filled with something unspoken, the weight of gratitude, of shared struggle. But beneath that peace lingered a quiet storm. Lila's cough had grown worse. Her mother tried to hide it behind laughter, but Ethan noticed the tremor in her hands, the medicine bottles stacked near the stove. One evening, he walked back to his car and sat in silence, gripping the steering wheel. 4 years, he had tried to fill his pain with money. Now he saw pain he couldn't buy his way out of, not someone else's. The next morning, Lila wasn't at her usual corner. He waited for nearly an hour before worry pushed him to drive to Alder Street. Her mother opened the door with a strained smile. "She's okay, just resting. Fever. Can I see her?" She nodded. Inside, the room smelled faintly of damp fabric and tea leaves. Lila lay curled on a thin mattress, her hair stuck to her forehead, the basket of flowers beside her pillow. Even sick, she smiled when she saw him. "Don't worry," she whispered. "I'll be fine. You still need your morning flower." He laughed through the ache in his throat and sat beside her. "You just rest. I'll bring coffee when you're better. Promise. Promise." He reached into his coat pocket and placed something next to her, a small wooden music box. When she turned the key, a slow, fragile tune filled the air. Her eyes widened. "It's beautiful." Ethan smiled. "It was my son's. I think he'd want you to have it." She clutched it like treasure. "Thank you." As he left, the notes of that little melody followed him down the hallway, soft, imperfect, human. That night, Ethan stood by his window again, watching the city lights shimmer across glass towers. He realized that somewhere in that maze of lights, a little girl had given him more peace than all his riches combined. But life had a way of testing the fragile things, and soon, that peace would be shattered. The next few weeks moved like slow rain, quiet, heavy, never-ending. Lila's condition improved at first, enough for her to laugh again, enough for Ethan to start believing she'd be okay. But healing, he learned, was a fragile illusion. One morning, the doctor called him into the hallway. His expression carried the kind of calm that always hid bad news. "Her lungs are weakening faster than we expected. We'll do everything we can, but she'll need a transplant soon. Without it..." He didn't finish. He didn't have to. Ethan's fingers tightened around the edge of the counter. For a moment, the old, ruthless version of him, the one who solved everything with money, tried to surface. "Then find one. I'll pay whatever it takes." The doctor's eyes softened. "I know, sir. But it's not about money this time. It's about time." Ethan stood there long after the man left, the sterile hallway spinning around him. Time, that was the one currency he could never buy back. That evening, Lila noticed his silence. "You look like you've lost something," she said softly. He swallowed hard. "Maybe I have." She reached out, placing her tiny hand over his. "Don't be sad, Mr. Ethan. You always tell me that hope makes people stronger. So, we keep hoping, okay? He smiled, even though it hurt. Okay. She leaned back, tired but still smiling. When I get better, can we go see the ocean? I've never been. Mama says it's where heaven and earth hold hands. Ethan felt something inside him crumble. We'll go, he whispered. I promise. She nodded, closing her eyes as the soft hum of machines filled the silence. If that moment hit you hard, leave a red heart hash. Sometimes one little symbol says what our hearts can't. Later that night, Ethan sat in the hospital chapel, empty except for the low flicker of candles. He hadn't prayed since Noah's accident. His faith had died with his son. But now, sitting beneath the dim light, he found himself whispering to the quiet. Please, don't take her too. His voice cracked, echoing softly through the hollow room. He didn't know if anyone was listening, but somehow, the act of speaking felt like breathing again. When he returned to Lila's room, he found her mother awake, watching the monitors with trembling hands. I'm sorry, Ethan said quietly. I should have done more, sooner. She shook her head. You've done enough, Mr. Cole. You gave her joy. That's more than the doctors can. Her voice broke halfway through the sentence, and Ethan's heart shattered with it. He wanted to say something, anything, but his words failed him. The next morning, he brought Lila a small gift, a sketchbook with her name engraved on the cover. She grinned, eyes shining like sunlight on glass. For me? Only if you promise to fill it, he said. She flipped through the blank pages and whispered, then you have to promise to read it when I'm gone. Ethan froze. Lila, don't say that. It's okay, she said softly. Mama says we all go home someday. I just might get there first. Tears burned behind his eyes. He turned away, afraid she'd see them. You know what I think, she continued. Maybe your son and my dad are friends up there. Maybe they're watching us, hoping we'll smile more. He couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. But in that moment, something inside him broke, and through that break, light finally entered. He realized that grief wasn't something to bury. It was something to share, piece by piece, until it hurt a little less. And as Lila drifted to sleep, holding the music box close, Ethan sat beside her, whispering through tears, I'll find a way, little one. I promise you'll see the ocean. 2 nights later, the city slept under a heavy storm. Lightning cracked over the skyline, painting white scars across the glass towers. Inside the hospital, Ethan sat in the waiting area, hands clasped, suit wrinkled, eyes hollow. Lila's condition had worsened. The doctors spoke in soft tones, but he caught the truth in their pauses. Her mother wept quietly in the corner, whispering prayers to a ceiling that didn't answer. Ethan rose suddenly and stepped out into the hallway, his chest aching with helplessness. He had made deals that moved nations, yet here, in this narrow corridor that smelled of antiseptic and fear, he was powerless. Hours passed. The rain eased into silence. Then, as dawn stretched pale fingers across the horizon, the doctor approached. His eyes said everything. Ethan's knees gave way. The world tilted, blurred. Somewhere behind the noise in his ears, he heard a woman's broken sob, Lila's mother, and the faint, mechanical tone of a machine going still. He didn't cry. Not then. He just stood there, numb, staring at the closed door that separated him from the only light his world had known in years. Later that morning, a nurse handed him a small envelope with his name written in uneven letters. She told us to give you this, she whispered. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside was a drawing of the ocean, 2 stick figures standing side by side beneath a rising sun. Beneath it, in her shaky handwriting, were the words, "Thank you for keeping your promise. Now, I can see it from heaven. Don't stop smiling, Mr. Ethan. Love, Lila." The tears came then, quiet at first, then uncontrollable. They fell onto the paper, blurring her words into soft blue streaks. He pressed the drawing to his chest and whispered, "You kept your promise first, kiddo." That night, he went back to the chapel. The candles still flickered weakly, shadows dancing along the walls. He sat on the same bench, clutching the drawing, whispering a confession he should have said long ago. "Lila, I wasn't there when my own son needed me. I was too busy chasing what didn't matter. But you reminded me what love looks like. You forgave a man who didn't deserve it." His voice cracked. "I don't know if I can forgive myself." He bowed his head, silent for a long time, before whispering the word she would have wanted to hear. "Forgive." Be honest, could you forgive after what they did? Type forgive if you could, or never if it would break you too deeply. A week later, the hospital staff invited him to attend a small memorial Lila's mother had arranged. It wasn't grand, just a handful of neighbors, paper flowers placed in jars, and soft music from the same little box Ethan had given her. When her mother saw him, she walked over and pressed something into his hand, a folded piece of paper and a shell necklace. "She made this for you," she said. Said it was so you'd never forget the ocean she dreamed of. He opened the note. Inside were only 4 words, "Keep giving, not grieving." For the first time in years, Ethan smiled without forcing it. It was shaky, full of tears, but it was real. That evening, he drove to the coast, the place she had always wanted to see. The horizon stretched endlessly before him, waves roaring like they carried her laughter. He stood barefoot in the sand, holding the shell necklace, and whispered into the wind, "We made it, Lila. You're here." The wind answered with a soft breeze, brushing his face like a tiny hand saying goodbye. And for the first time, Ethan didn't feel alone anymore. Months passed, but Ethan kept returning to that same shore, the one Lila had only seen in her dreams. He'd sit on a weathered bench overlooking the water, the shell necklace wrapped gently around his wrist, and let the waves speak in her voice. The city knew him as a billionaire, but here he was just a man who'd once made a little girl smile. That was the version he liked better. One evening, as the sun sank low, he noticed a group of children playing near the pier, their laughter echoing through the salty air. A small girl stumbled, dropping her toy into the surf. Without thinking, Ethan kicked off his shoes and ran toward her, wading into the water to fish it out. When he returned, drenched but smiling, the child's mother thanked him softly. "You didn't have to." He cut her off gently, his eyes kind. "Yes, I did." It was the first time he had felt peace instead of pain. That night, he wrote in his journal, something he'd started doing since Lila passed. "Kindness doesn't die. It just changes hands." The next morning, Ethan called his assistant. "I need to start something new," he said. "A foundation. For children who can't afford treatment, just like Lila." Within months, the Lila Grace Foundation was born, a name that carried her light into every hospital wing and every child's heart. The first clinic opened in the same building where she once fought to live. The walls were painted sky blue, and in the main hall hung her drawing of the ocean, the one she had made for him. Whenever someone asked why he named it after her, Ethan would smile faintly. "Because she taught me how to live when I thought I'd forgotten." During the Foundation's first Father's Day charity event, the hall overflowed with families, laughter, songs, and balloons shaped like hearts. Children gave Ethan hand-drawn cards, each one brighter than the last. But one card stopped him cold. It was from a young girl in a wheelchair. Crayon words spelled out, "Thank you for saving my dad's life." His eyes blurred again. For the first time, he realized Lila's gift had never really stopped giving. It had rippled outward, touching lives he'd never even meet. He stepped outside for air, standing beneath the same golden sunset she once drew. And for a moment, it felt like she was standing beside him, small hand in his, whispering softly, "See? You did it." He smiled toward the horizon, tears catching in the glow. "No, Lila," he murmured. "We did." If you believe love still wins, comment amen. Let's fill this section with hope. Maybe someone scrolling right now needs to see it. Later that evening, when the event ended and the crowd drifted home, Ethan sat alone in the empty hall. The drawing of the ocean hung above him, glowing faintly under the lights. He opened his phone and typed a post to the Foundation's page. "She had nothing, but she gave me everything. If you ever feel like your kindness doesn't matter, remember her. Sometimes the smallest soul leaves the biggest mark." The post went viral overnight. Thousands of people shared their own stories, messages from fathers, daughters, strangers across continents. Each one said the same thing in their own way. Kindness found me because of her. And in that flood of warmth, Ethan finally understood the truth. Grief doesn't end when you stop crying. It ends when you start giving. As dawn broke again over the city, light spilled into the hall through the windows, falling perfectly on Lila's ocean drawing. The colors shimmered like the waves were alive again, as if she was still painting her sky from somewhere above. And Ethan whispered, barely audible, "You made a billionaire cry, and then you made him believe again." The morning sun poured through the tall glass windows of the foundation hall, painting soft amber stripes across the marble floor. Ethan stood there quietly, hands in his pockets, watching parents and children enter the clinic with tired eyes and leave with smiles. Every door that opened, every small laugh that echoed, felt like another heartbeat added to Lila's legacy. He walked through the corridors slowly, tracing his fingers along the walls adorned with children's paintings, rainbows, hearts, and oceans. In the center of the hallway, framed in gold, was Lila's original sketch, a man and a little girl holding hands by the sea. Below it, a simple plaque read, "Kindness never dies, it just finds new hands." Ethan felt his throat tighten. "You'd be proud of this, Lila," he whispered, almost to himself. "You made me see life again." As he stepped outside, the wind carried the faint sound of waves, even though the sea was miles away. He smiled. It was as if the world itself was whispering her name. Later that day, during the clinic's anniversary celebration, a little boy approached him holding a small seashell necklace. His hands trembled slightly. "Sir, my sister wanted you to have this. She said it's lucky." Ethan knelt, accepting it gently. "What's her name?" "Grace," the boy said, grinning. "Like the name on the wall." He looked at the necklace, almost identical to the one Lila once gave him. The same uneven shape, the same thin string. A single tear rolled down his cheek as he realized, maybe kindness does travel in circles. Maybe it always finds its way home. That night, as fireworks lit up the skyline, Ethan stood by the foundation's balcony overlooking the city lights. Each flicker felt like a heartbeat in the night, proof that the story hadn't ended with loss. It had only begun with love. He closed his eyes and breathed in deeply, letting peace settle where grief used to live. He remembered her small voice, her laughter, her words echoing in his mind, "One day, I'll see the ocean." He smiled faintly. "You're already there," he whispered. "If this story moved you, don't scroll past quietly. Tap like, not for me, but for the soul who carried this pain and still stayed kind." One click can be your way of saying, "I felt you." The camera of the mind fades back, showing Ethan alone on the balcony, holding two seashell necklaces in his hands, one old and one new. Below him, the city glowed like a sea of light, waves of humanity moving and breathing, each soul carrying a story of its own. He turned toward the horizon, where the first morning rays began to appear. The sky bloomed with color, golden and soft, just like Lila had painted it. Somewhere, a child's laughter echoed, carried by the wind. And in that sound, Ethan found everything he'd been searching for, not in money, not in power, but in the fragile, eternal beauty of human kindness. He whispered his final words to the wind, words that would outlive both of them. "She had nothing, yet she gave me everything." The waves kept moving. The story kept breathing. And somewhere beyond sight, she smiled.